Hi guys, thank you so much for tuning back into my channel. Today I'm going to talk about what to expect right after you get your braid locks installed. For full clarity, when I did my braid locks, it was 3 days after I'd washed it. And it was kind of not planned, but like not planned. I did it on stretched hair. And I typically, when I had loose natural hair, I used to just stretch my hair out. So after washing, I would just braid it up into like 6 chunky braids. And then I would just kind of like style my hair throughout the week with that. So basically, the way I did my pattern, made it go all the way down. So I had 2 sections. And then I also like kind of went around the back. So I had 3 sections. So I basically had kind of what I have now without my undercut. So I had these 2, and then I had the one in the back. Okay, for the back, I kind of just did it going row by row by row, and then like cutting it like this. And then when I got to like this part here, I basically took each of these sections and I made it into 3 sections. So I like cut a triangle here that was basically like this part right here, and then I cut 2 into this area. So I had one going like this and then the other one in the back here. So that's how I did these 2 parts. For the triangle section here, I went like this. I just kind of cut it like that. And then for this quadrant here, I went like this. And then the rest also I went like this in the back. At the end of the day, it won't really matter like whether you like did your hair going this way or however, because the hair will grow and like the locks will form. Just to clarify, I had 3 main quadrants. So I had a back section and 2 front sections, and then in the front sections I split it into 3, going like this and going like this. And so that's how I did it, and I had 201 locks that I started with. So when I started braiding the hair, I started from the back and finished in the front. And right after braiding, I was so tired because it took me like a day and a half basically to do this, and I slept for like maybe 6 hours in between, and I could not feel my butt, and it was just like, oh my god. Right after I finished it, so the hair obviously it's gonna look a little crazy because I mean I started off on stretched hair. So as soon as I finished it, all I had was just kind of like hair sticking like everywhere, right? Because like obviously the braids I started with were pretty small. It doesn't really have that much weight, you know. If you did like a twist, like, you know, mini twist will like, you know, lay nicely, but like the braids were just kind of like all over the place. So just be prepared once you finish. I mean, it's not gonna be really cute. It's just gonna be like, okay, so we finished and let's just exit the building because we're not going out living like this. The next day I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, okay, this is definitely not working. You can imagine if you braid your hair by itself without any extensions on stretched hair, the ends are gonna be looking funky. Everything's just gonna kind of stick and stand by itself, and it just looks extremely scalpy. Each braid was almost, I would say, like maybe a third the thickness of what I have now. So it was very thin, even though I had really thick hair, but it was very thin looking once it was braided, and it just looked like a bunch of scalp. When I tried to put it in a ponytail, it was this big. So the next thing that will probably happen to you is that your hair will be very itchy. My scalp was very itchy, and it was just like I was scratching it the whole time, and I was like, this is just not working. So I just went to like take a shower and I washed my hair. So literally I washed my hair the day after I installed the braid locks, and that felt so good. And I was like, oh, now I remember why I decided to do locks. Because I mean, imagine washing your hair, no detangling comb, no nothing. The whole process took me like maybe 10 minutes, including showering. Okay, so, and it was just so nice to have the water touch my scalp, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a really good journey. After I finished washing the hair, I came out and the hair was looking better. I mean, it was still very scalpy, but it was looking better, and it wasn't looking like, almost like, I don't know, it wasn't looking dead. Kind of like, you know, stretched hair that you braided, kind of. Then I put some conditioner in it and I oiled my scalp, because that's what I typically used to do anyways when I was loose natural. And then the first surprise came. So after the hair dried, one thing you need to know is that when I braided each like hair, I basically braided up until like this point, then I twisted the rest down. But one thing that I ended up noticing is that the braids will unravel a little bit, about 1.5 inches upwards. But in the beginning, when you first do it and you wash your hair and you come out the shower, you have like really, really sleek braids. And at the ends of all the braids, you have perfect curls, right? Because I mean, the parts are really small and the curl just like is a perfect spiral that you're just like, wow, this is so gorgeous. But then when it dries, it poofs up. So imagine you have like braids, nice neat braids because you just did it, and then you have like poofed up like ends, just puff 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 puff. It was very hard to style the hair in the beginning. I honestly didn't really know what to do because I was like, I can't go out like this because it just looked like imagine like straws of like hay just like sticking out of your head, and then like, yeah. So I put my hair in a ponytail and I went out and I did what I had to do. And by the time I came back, I was like, okay, I can't just always put my hair in a ponytail and go everywhere. Like, the hair kind of needs to breathe at some point, right? So what I ended up doing to kind of solve the problem of the poofy ends and like the perfect braids was that after I washed my hair, I used to I had a little bit of the As I Am curling custard left over from like Loose Natural days. So I used to take like a little bit of that like curling custard jelly thing, and I used to put it on the ends of the hair to make sure that those spiral curls would like dry as a spiral curl. So that way I would have like braid and then like a curly end. Just be prepared that you might be looking a little crazy, honestly, for the first 2 to 3 weeks. That was like my first problem. And then after I fixed that, I started to notice, after about like 3 washes, I started to notice, especially right here in the middle, there was a lot of frizz. Like loose hairs just were coming out of everywhere, and I was just like, I don't even understand. Like, I'm pretty sure that I braided every single strand of hair that I had on my head. Where are all these loose strands coming from? And honestly, I have no answer for you because that's still how I feel today. Like, frizz and locks is a part of life, okay? You just have to embrace the fact that you're gonna have frizz no matter what, especially like in your just in your scalp area. I don't know, it's just what it is. The other thing that will also happen is that when you first do your very first interlock, now if you palm roll, I don't know what's gonna happen because I didn't palm roll, but if you do decide that you want to interlock your hair, the very first interlock that you do is going to look very weird. Actually, the first couple of interlocks that you do will be very weird because you're gonna have like bulbage. I don't even know if you can see it in mine, but you'll be able to tell exactly like where you interlocked the hair because it'll be like straight and then bulb, straight bulb, straight bulb, and it'll just kind of go like that. Let me try and find one. So it may not show up perfectly well on the camera, but you can see I interlocked right here. I also interlocked right here. I interlocked here. And then you just kind of like see those bulbage going throughout the hair. I'm not sure if you can really see it anymore, but you would basically have like almost like a little poof and then like the interlock and then like a little poof and then the interlock and a little poof. And for me, that kind of freaked me out a little bit when I first did my interlock because I mean, I didn't know anybody that had braid locks. I don't really see these things often, so I wasn't really sure what to do, and it just looked weird, and I was like, so is this how it's gonna be forever? Like, what's going on? Now it's kind of like evened out a little bit and it's not as obvious that there's like a bump and a bump and a bump and a bump. But before, I could literally count like the last 5 interlocks that I've done based on like how much my hair kind of like expanded and it contracted and expanded and contracted. But that didn't happen to like any of the hair and the perimeters, like the really thin ones, the ones that I cut like really tiny. You can't really see any like demarcation. It's just kind of like smooth. When you do that first interlock, when you finish interlocking it, you're gonna have like a freshly interlocked root. You know how it looks tidy, right? It looks like it looks put together, right? Like it doesn't have any more like loose hairs. And then you're gonna have like a bump, and then you're gonna have the braid. So it's gonna look really funny. But don't worry, you know, as your hair grows, the braid that is there will eventually swell, right? And so it'll almost swell to match the size of the bump that you have. I hope that makes sense for y'all, but that's what's gonna happen the first couple months, okay? And another thing to realize is, if you really want to ensure and make sure that every single one of your locks is kind of the same thickness throughout, you want to make sure that you braid your strands to the very, very end. Because like I said before, I braided mine to like maybe 2 inches before, and then I twisted it because I just got lazy. I mean, it was a lot. But that 2 inches that I left eventually unraveled to like 3.5. That's fine with me, but let me show you what ends up happening. Basically, the part that is twisted will end up being like a thicker lock than the part that is braided. I'm not sure if you can completely see, but for example, this part right here was twisted. This part was twisted, and this part was like the remaining braids. But there's kind of like an inconsistency, like this part's a little thicker than the rest of like the lock. I know there are others that have like more thickness, but let me try and find some. Like this is another one where like right here is really thick, and then this other one's kind of like a different size. Like you can see like that bump right there, and that's because this was twisted and this was braided. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. I mean, I really don't care, I really don't mind, it does not bother me at all. But if you're trying to have like a very, very, you know, even lock throughout the whole thing, make sure that you braid your hair to the very last piece of hair and just leave it at that, because if not, like it's gonna unravel upwards, and then as those locks mature, the twisted part is gonna be thicker than the braided part. Back to, you just did your braids and it's literally like the same day, a week after you just did it or something like that, and you still have your extreme scalpage and the hair is very, very thin and your ponytail is this big. What do you do? How do you go out? Like, how do you even interact at this point? Because you're gonna look so drastically different from what you did before, especially if you had like long, loose, natural hair. So what I found was the best thing was to do braid outs. And that's so funny because it's like braid outs on braids, right? But braid outs gave me so much like volume and definition. And because each braid was so like thin, when I braided it into like a chunky braid for a braid out, and when I unbraided it, it came out so gorgeous. You know when you have like really, really perfect like spiral curls and like everything just looks so perfect and like even and done? That's how like my hair would look when I do braid outs, like a week after I got it installed, 2 weeks after I got it installed, 3 weeks after I got it installed. So for like the first 2 months, I basically did not go anywhere without my hair in a braid out. And it was pretty easy because I mean, I would wash my hair on like a Sunday, I would do my conditioning thing, and I would braid it up into like maybe 10 braids basically. Not too thick, not too thin either, because anybody got time for that. But just like medium-sized braids, small to medium-sized braids. And then the next like Monday morning I would unbraid it, because my hair basically took like 2 seconds to dry because it was so thin, like there was nothing to even like dry. So I would unbraid it in like Monday morning and go about my day. So I can either like pin up like a side, or just like flip it to the side or something, or do half up, half down, or just let it all be down. And that looked so much better. So basically like I could never wear my hair like just wash and just like let it air dry and just like let it be. Like when in the first 2 to 3 months, there is no way. It just was, no. It was too scalpy and it was just too thin looking. But with the braid outs, it gave it so much more like volume and body and bounce, and it looked so good. So braid outs are gonna be your friend when you first do your braid locks, and that's what I can give y'all, okay? In terms of itchy scalp, I mean, I think I don't have itchy scalp anymore, but I know in the very beginning my scalp was super itchy. And I definitely washed my hair more often than I do now, even though I wash it once a week now. I typically used to wash it like twice a week because it was itchy. And I think that for me, after the hair grew out, so let's say like after about like 2 weeks after doing the braid locks, then the itchiness stopped. And I think it just has to do with the fact that your hair just, at least my hair just wasn't used to like being in so much like constriction, right? Because it was always loose, it was doing whatever it wanted to do. and then all of a sudden it had to be like confined. So I think the itchiness after about a week or two should go away. If it doesn't, you can get like castor oil, which is a really thick oil, and like oil scalp with that. And then, like, you know, change it as your hair matures and it grows, and it, you know, its needs will change, right? That's kind of like the immediate effects to expect when you get braid locks. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one. Thank you so much for watching.